Hey there, and welcome. Have you ever looked at a business that seemed to be doing everything right, and then suddenly it just tanks? Well, it's often not about what's happening inside the company, but everything happening around it. Today, we're going to break down the business environment and show you how everything, from your closest competitor to what's happening in global politics, can literally decide the fate of any company. And this quote right here, this is the key to everything we're about to talk about. Don't think of a business as some isolated fortress. No. Think of it as a living, breathing organism. It's connected, it reacts, and you know what? It has to adapt to survive in its ecosystem. And that's exactly what we're going to explore. So, what exactly is this ecosystem? Let's put a real definition on it and break it down into two basic layers. Trust me, it's way simpler than it sounds. Okay, so here's the formal definition. It's the grand total of everything that can possibly impact a company. Now, obviously, you can't analyze everything all at once, right? That would be impossible. So strategists break it down by looking at it through two very different lenses. Think of it like this. The microenvironment is your neighborhood. It's the players you see, you talk to, and you deal with every single day. The macro environment, that's more like the global weather system. You can't change it, but you absolutely have to prepare for it. So we're going to look through both of these lenses, and we'll start with the one that's closest to home. All right, let's zoom in on that microenvironment. You can think of these as the main actors in your company's daily drama. These are the folks you have a direct, hands-on relationship with. So who's in this inner circle? Well, first and foremost, your customers. They are the absolute lifeblood of the firm. Then you've got your competitors, all fighting for the same piece of the pie. Of course, there are your suppliers, whose performance can literally make or break your operations. Then you have intermediaries, like retailers or distributors, who are that critical bridge to your customer. And finally, a group we call publics. Think media outlets, community groups, anyone who has a potential interest or impact. The key thing here is you can interact with and to some degree influence all of these players. Okay, so we've mapped out the immediate neighborhood. Now, let's pull back. It's time to zoom out to the macro environment. These are the big, uncontrollable waves that can either lift up or completely sink every single boat in the harbor. So how in the world do you even begin to analyze forces this big? It can feel chaotic. Well, business strategists have a kind of secret weapon for this. It's called the PESTLE framework, and it is a super effective way to audit the world around you. PESTLE is just an acronym, and each letter stands for a massive external force. P is for political. Think government policies, trade rules. E is economic, inflation, interest rates, all that good stuff. S is for social. This is all about cultural trends, what people care about, how we live. T is technological, the crazy pace of innovation and automation. E is for environmental, climate change, sustainability. It's huge. And finally, L is for legal, the laws and regulations that set the rules of the game. Put them all together, and you get a pretty clear picture of the world you're operating in. So we've got our two lenses, micro and macro. We've got our framework, PESTLE. But now for the most important question of all. So what? What do you actually do with all this information? How does this move from being a theory in a classroom to a real winning strategy out in the world? If you talk to a business professor, they'll tell you that success all comes down to one core idea: strategic fit. It just means that your company's internal strengths have to line up perfectly with what the external environment is demanding. To put it bluntly, if you're a company that's built for a world that doesn't exist anymore, you're going to fail. And this quote just nails it. It's not about being the biggest or having the most resources. It's about being the most adaptable. The best companies, they have this kind of early warning radar. They're constantly scanning the horizon, they're detecting these subtle shifts in customer tastes or a new regulation coming down the pike, and they pivot before it's too late. Now, let's switch hats and think like a real-world consultant. They'll tell you that while all this analysis is crucial, it can also be a trap. The goal isn't to write a perfect 100-page report. The goal is to make smart, decisive moves. You have to avoid what they call analysis paralysis at all costs. And here's a simple 4-step playbook for putting it all into action. First, you scan. You're constantly watching for new trends. Second, you monitor. You track the trends that actually seem to matter. Third, you forecast. You try to project what their future impact might be. And finally, the most important step, you assess. Is this a threat you need to defend against, or is it an opportunity you can jump on? Okay,
We have covered a lot of ground, from your customers right up to global politics. But I want to leave you with one final and I think most profound idea. It is the ultimate reality check for any business, and it's the one thing you can never, ever afford to ignore.
This is such a powerful concept. No business, and I mean no business, exists in a vacuum. It operates with the permission of society. That's its customers, its community, its government. This license to operate, it isn't a physical piece of paper. It's a form of social trust, and you better believe that it can be revoked.
Just let that sink in for a second. You can have the best product, the most brilliant team, the most efficient factory in the world. But if society, if those big macro forces like social values or environmental standards turns against you, none of that other stuff matters. That social license is the foundation everything else is built on.
So you see, understanding this entire ecosystem isn't just some academic exercise. It's a fundamental survival skill. And that brings us to our final question for you to think about. When you look at your own industry, or maybe your own career, which of these forces, the immediate players in your micro world or those huge shifting tides of the macro world, which one is more difficult for you to get a handle on? Which one keeps you up at night? Because the answer to that question reveals where your biggest challenges and maybe, just maybe, your greatest opportunities really lie.